Hello. So, when I was growing up, my parents always got up early. They had a long commute, and they would work on a fixed 9-to-5 schedule, which meant, for me, that was what being an adult was like. Nowadays, new technologies means that we can do other things, and this is no longer true. For me, this is definitely not true. I work in a totally remote company. We are 67 amazing co-workers, and from Australia to America, and we just get to see each other once a year. And so this question was already asked, and this totally set me off. But so, how many of you work remotely? We already know, or have remote coworkers. So this talk is not just for you. I will talk a bit about the learnings from the company that I work on and how you can improve your work environment and what practices you can use to actually improve your team. So communication is the centerpiece of any team, and without communication, everything fails. At Doist, as the number of people grew, the number of problems, of course, also grew. Communication is still probably the biggest problem we are trying to fix today, and probably one problem that everyone here is also trying to fix. About 6 years ago, we had a big product launch, and we were having lots of meetings, and meetings weren't actually very productive. We used chat apps, so we were always permanently under notifications. We couldn't actually disconnect, either for a deep work session or to enjoy our weekends or our nights. And many of the communication was lost in the middle of all these chat apps, and we couldn't know exactly where to find what. So after we launched the product, or this release, we actually decided to try to see how we could solve these communication problems that we found. And one of the first things that we did was default to asynchronous communication. So we are a remote company, and being a remote company means people are working in totally different time zones. If I'm working during my day, it will be night in Taiwan already, and it will be still super night in the United States, but they will have their day when my day is finishing. So chat apps weren't working for us, so we decided to build our own app to fix this communication issue. We created Twist, and this is how we default to asynchronous communication. And at Doist, no one ever expects a fast answer. So whenever we ask someone, we are already expecting that it will take maybe 24 hours for us to get a reply. We always have multiple projects going on, so we make sure that when I'm blocked on something because I'm waiting for feedback, I will be working on something else. But of course, asynchronous communication doesn't solve everything, so we also have mindful meetings. And recently in a project I'm located in Porto, Portugal, and I was working with a designer from Seattle, a designer from Taipei, and a marketing person from Seattle. So that meant that whatever we did, someone would have to have a really early morning meeting, and someone would have to have a super late meeting in the afternoon, because there was no way around those. So we always try to make our meetings as productive as possible. They are always scheduled in advance, and we always have a Todoist project. Todoist is one of our products with the agenda, so we always know what the things we want to discuss, and we also list the actionables during the agenda, so everyone knows who is responsible to do them, and everyone knows what the conclusions from the agenda were. That doesn't mean that we don't catch up in the beginning of each meeting. Of course we do. It's really nice to see everyone, and we don't actually get to see them very often. But we still try to optimize our meetings to make sure that they disturb everyone's life as little as possible. So we try to make them as fast as possible. But lastly, over-communication is a must. So we are a really fast-moving company, and we have 2 products, only 67 of us, which means that we are always working on multiple things at the same time, and sometimes we disconnect just to be able to focus on our own work. That means that we always try to over-communicate. For example, if we have a release, we don't just show the release date on the company level. We always make sure that we also show it multiple other times, so we know that everyone is in sync and nothing will get lost. So, communication. If you want to try to improve the communication inside of your team, I would suggest you to try these 3 things. Asynchronous first, which means that no one needs to be online at any specific time. Have mindful meetings, always create an agenda, and always create the actionables throughout the agenda and make sure that they are shared with everyone. And when in doubt, over-communicate. That's the only way you know that something won't get lost. The second thing on the team is feedback. Asking it and providing feedback is our day-to-day life. But actually, until I joined Doist, because we are a remote company, I never noticed how bad most of it are at asking and providing feedback. We usually ask super vague questions, which lead to equally vague and complex answers through unorganized thoughts, and the feedback multiple times gets lost because no one will actually create an actionable related to it. So, to try to fix this, we try to be as precise and clear when asking and also when providing feedback. Instead of thinking simple things like, what do you think of this mock-up? We actually ask super detailed questions. Hey, here is the latest mock-up. What do you think of the icons? What do you think the users can understand the application? Do you prefer this or those device frames? And this will help not only you, making sure that you will get the answers that you are looking for and that your doubts will be replied, but it will also organize the people, the person that is providing feedback, to organize their own thoughts. And most of the time, the feedback will actually be done exactly following the same structure. So they will reply 1, 2, and 3, and maybe they will add some extra points to it, so all your answers will be answered for sure. But we use multiple tools every day. I think most of you do. And all of the tools that we use nowadays allow us to add comments, to add in place feedback. So many times the feedback gets lost. So within your company, create some guidelines to where feedback should live. It shouldn't come from everywhere. You should know exactly where to leave your kind of feedback. So for us at Doist, most of the feedback or most of the discussions happen on our own product, Twist, and this is where the big discussions and the big comments will happen. But besides that, we also provide in-local comments in the other softwares that we use, like, hey, this should be a link, or here are multiple comments on specific places of the mockups that you share that maybe could be improved. But no matter how you collect this feedback, via a chat app, via Twist, via Marvin, Zeppelin, whatever tools you use, being it in an in-person conversation or in a meeting, make sure that you always create actionables. That will make sure that the things that you need to do are transparent to everyone. So you will know who is responsible and what the deadlines are, and nothing will be lost. So, if you want to improve the feedback in your company, try to be clear and precise, both as asking the feedback and providing it. Have clear guidelines on where the feedback should live, and create actionables around those, around that feedback. Third point, I will talk about tools. As the company grows, the need for tools will also increase, and from my personal experience, we try to think about tools really late on the process. So, for example, when I joined Doist 6.5 years ago, we were only 2 designers, which meant that we could actually use the software that we preferred. I was working in the product apps, the other designer was working on the landing page, so I could use Illustrator because that was the thing that I preferred, and he could live on Photoshop because that's where he was more productive. And this worked, but when more people joined the company, this soon became a problem, and we had some delayed discussions that actually meant that the team was less productive, and this meant that things got delayed also while working on new features. The third problem I can see a lot while choosing tools is following trends. So I mentioned in the past we used chat applications to communicate because everyone else in the industry was doing it. But that was actually not working for Doist, and it was actually destroying everyone's personal life. We couldn't ever disconnect, and we were always online. So I will tell you how we chose the communication app that we use today as an example of how you can choose the tools that better fit your needs. So firstly, define your needs and be really specific on what your needs are. For example, for Doist and the communication tool that we were trying to find, we knew that we needed to support multiple time zones, so people would need time to disconnect. So we would need to discuss multiple topics at the same time, because discussions couldn't happen just when one finishes, another starts. We wanted to make sure that the information was always organized. It should be easy to add people at any point in any conversation. It should allow people to disconnect and then to enjoy their lives, or even have a deep focus work session, because that's super important at Doist. It should be easy to revive a conversation, because it's not just because we have some conclusions on one day that 2 years from now we don't want to actually refute that same conclusions. Everyone should have a voice. It's not the person that speaks louder that actually has the truth. So everyone should be comfortable talking with everyone else. We wanted to keep this team spirit alive, especially because we are a remote team. And we wanted to have a central communication hub where all the communication inside the team could live. So we did some research of the market, which is what you usually do when you try to look for tools. And the tools that we found that could maybe solve our issues were chat applications, emails, and forums. We were already using chat apps, and they weren't working for us, as I mentioned before. It was really hard to revive conversations, it was hard to disconnect, and people were feeling left out. So chat applications definitely weren't for us. We are also using email, but as most of you know, it's really hard to add someone later on in an email to a conversation. And it's really easy to forget to reply all button, so we end up replying only to one person and not to everyone that was on the thread. And at the same time, it doesn't allow you to have a central place with all the information, so emails also weren't working for us. So the tools that were closer to fix all our needs were actually forums, but we found that they were not easy to keep the team spirit alive. So when the time came to make a choice, we realized that we couldn't choose one application that fit all our needs. We could, of course, choose more than one, but then we would have a hard time knowing what kind of information was in each place, and we weren't willing to make any compromise. And that is why we decided to create Twist, and this happened right after the launch about 6 years ago, where we had multiple discussions, and things were a mess, and they weren't very productive, and that's when we started developing Twist. In Twist, everything is organized in channels. All channels are organized in threads, which means that we can easily keep the conversations open. We can easily go back. We have multiple conversations open at the same time. Nothing gets lost. It's also really easy for us to reopen a conversation. Even if it was closed a long time ago, we can just reopen it. It's really easy to add someone else to the conversation. They just need to scroll up and read all the previous comments. We don't expect an immediate response from anyone in the company, and we actually designed our product that way. And at the same time, we also allow a time-off feature, which means that You actually don't receive notifications on your phone if you're on vacations, if you are on a parental leave, or something like that. We really encourage people to disconnect and stop checking their phones and their things. And at the same time, everyone else was on the same application, so we could easily keep conversations alive, and we could make sure that the team spirit was also alive. So, if you want to choose tools, make sure that you define your needs, research the market, and make a choice. But make a choice actually based on the things that you need. So for us, that meant building our own tool because we couldn't find anything that fitted all our needs. For you, maybe there is an app that can fit. If not, maybe you can compromise using two or compromising some of the features. For us, that wasn't a choice. Doist actually became the most important tool that we use in the company. Without it, we would be totally lost. We wouldn't be able to organize ourselves inside the company. And the last thing I will speak to you about today is about team spirit. A team is composed by humans, and humans always want human connection. So making sure that everyone feels comfortable talking with everyone is super important for us, especially because we are remote. I mentioned before that I joined the company about 6.5 years ago, and our first team retreat was about 4 years ago. During those first 2.5 years, I was lucky enough to meet some of my coworkers, either because they lived in a city close to me, or because we were traveling to the same place. But some of my coworkers I actually never saw during those first 2.5 years, which make it awkward for me to ask them for stuff without knowing exactly how they would behave, or that could meant that there were some communication problems, some misunderstandings, and this wasn't my fault or their fault. It was just cultural differences and lack of body language while communicating, because most of the communication was done in a written way, so we don't even see the face of the person. I was lucky because in the city that I live in, I always have coworkers that live in the same city that I do. But I know that some of my coworkers also feel really lonely because they spend most of the year not actually working beside someone that they work with. So to solve these things, there are simple things that you could do. Some of them are really small steps, some of them are bigger, but first I would suggest you to define exactly what are the priorities of the team spirit and the team culture inside your own company or inside your smaller team. If you work on a co-located company, probably conversations will happen naturally during a lunch break or during a coffee. In a remote team, those conversations won't happen naturally, so you actually will need to take some effort starting them. Then, set a budget. That budget can be monetary if you want to make sure that you can put everyone into the same city and spend some time together, but it can also just be time. Maybe you just want to make sure that everyone jumps into a call, or if you are in the same city, everyone goes for a picnic. That doesn't mean that you need to actually spend money on that, but that means that people will need to take some time out of their work week to actually do this activity. And lastly, take action. So, taking time to improve the team spirit may seem secondary, related with doing our real design work or engineering work or whatever work we do, but it's actually a way to improve the team productivity and the way that we all communicate and work together. So at Doist, we have company retreats where we get together everyone in the same city and we just travel and spend time together. We also have a mentorship trip for everyone that joins the company. When someone joins the company, they will be assigned a mentor, and they will get a free trip to visit their mentor in the first week. So they actually know someone, and they have someone that can help them in the first couple of weeks. We have casual hangouts when we get together just to have fun and discuss nothing in particular. We have a music channel where we just discuss music that we like, and maybe we can give some tips to someone else. We have Ask Doist questions that go from what's the share that you use at home to what's your favorite chips flavor. It's really not important, but still we get to know each other. We have an inspiration channel where we share links to videos, blog posts, books, whatever it is that we think that someone else in the company might find inspiring or would like to see. We also have a parenting channel because life is not just about work, but it also includes our personal lives. So, see where the team spirit and the team culture fits within your company, set the budget for it, and actually take action. From someone that is lucky enough to have a company retreat every year, I can tell you that I feel really much more comfortable talking with my coworkers after I spent that time in person with them. But if you don't have the budget, even simple, are you a dog person or a cat person questions, maybe they will help you feel more comfortable with your coworkers. So just make sure that team is a priority, and because a company is composed by people, and people is the most important thing that you actually have on the team. So these are just some of my learnings throughout the last 6.5 years working remotely at Doist. And I'm sharing them with you because I believe that they are valuable not only if you are a remote company, but also if you are a co-located company. So communication, feedback, and tools, they are the base of any company. And I hope this can help you improve at least a little bit the dynamics within your team. So, communication, asynchronous first, mindful meetings, and always over-communicate. Feedback, be clear and precise, have guidelines, and always create actionables. Define your actual tools before you choose your actual needs before you choose your tools. Research the market, and only then make a choice. And define your priorities within your team. Set the budget, and finally take action. So working in any team is always kind of a roller coaster, and working on a remote team is even probably a bigger one. We are just now finding out about remote work and how we can operate people across multiple time zones and across the world. I still believe that remote work is the future, and yes, it's not a bed of roses, I can tell you that, but I still believe that the benefits outweigh the challenges. So I would suggest you to try it, but even if you don't, I hope you reach out if you have any question, and thank you.